Hello dear chess friends, it's black to play in this position. Please stop the video and find the best plan for black from this position. Today we are discussing when do we destroy and when should we build in chess. One of the most interesting questions, strategically speaking. How do we sense those moments where we must strike and play dynamically and sometimes take risks and burn the bridges? And when should we play like Karpov, like Petrosian, prophylaxis? When should we just keep on building our position slowly and quietly by keeping full control, right? No one is telling you in the actual game whether you should follow either of those strategies, right? You need to sense those moments yourself. Now we also talk about sensing the critical moments in chess and when we should just strike and cash in and when we should just keep our control and patiently build up our game. I will give you some interesting positions and it will be you who needs to figure out what should be done strategically speaking, okay? So in this case, folks, look at this position. We have the material advantage for black in this position if you pay close attention, right? Beautiful position, good knights. But if you look at this knight, for example, that's a bad piece. You also need to always ask yourself which piece is bad or good in a position. This should really catch your eye. This knight on b6 being a bad piece. So congratulations, you came up with the plan of knight d7. Black takes his time, black doesn't destroy, black keeps on patiently building his position because there are no threats we are facing. We have time in this position to build our position further. Time is our friend as black, right? White has no counterplay, and if given time, our knight could reach this beautiful g6 spot, and now white can no longer hold their weaknesses anymore. That's a beautiful plan, improving the worst place piece, and the white position collapses. For example, a4, knight g6, and we are completely winning in this position. Extra material, safer king, and the game goes on. Black is winning. This was the best plan, and this should have been seen from this position, right? So for those strategic maneuvers to take place, you need to ask yourself, do I have time to execute this plan? And yes, in this case, black had time for this maneuver because white had zero counterplay to change the picture, right? In the actual game, my student, instead of knight d7, he destroyed the position directly. He went for the sacrifice. Rook takes c2 in this position, which was a mistake, right? He wants to cash in his positional advantage directly because after takes, queen takes f4. He thought white can no longer prevent all these threats. He is going for an attack against the white king directly. He's going for a direct action. But if you just look closely, queen d3 prevents the mate in one. And after takes king g2, well, you can take one more pawn. But after king f2, well, where is the mating attack, right? The mating attack disappeared. Suddenly, there are threats like rook g1, oh my god. And look at your knight on b6, still terribly passive and crying on the queen side, right? So this was a beautiful mistake which was done by one of my students. But this is a very instructive position because if black did not destroy and go for direct action and instead patiently play the move knight d7, none of this would have happened. Black's mistake was that, hey, I get a good position, I have good pieces, you have bad king, so I must have something in this position. And he was looking all these active moves, direct moves, searching for tactics, right? He just thought that he had no time to lose, he must strike and go for a direct attack, which didn't work because there is no mating attack. And if there's no mating attack, you suddenly gave white the material advantage. Right now, there are like two rooks versus two knights. And suddenly, yes, black needs to find something directly. Otherwise, time is the friend of white in this position, right? If given time, white will consolidate their material advantage. So black is now taking so much risks in this position. Probably has to go for a pair play in this position with queen h4 checks and so on. But none of this was necessary from this position if they play the move knight d7 in this position. Just look how simple the game is. White has zero counterplay. You have all the time in the world to improve your knight. And in those moments, right, we should be patient. We should be patient. We should just ask ourselves, is time my friend or his friend or her friend? And if it's your friend, then it's Makes all the sense in the world, yeah, to engage in those slow transfer of a bad piece to a beautiful spot while also eyeing those weaknesses, right? You see how a plan is formed. Black is looking at one of his bad pieces. He's also eyeing those targets, those weaknesses on the king side, and this gives black a beautiful plan. Simple chess, right? There is nothing complex about this, and those pawns are not going anywhere. Eventually, we're gonna win this game with simple chess. It's white to play here, folks. Should white destroy the position and go for direct action, or should white keep building from this position? How should we treat this position with the white pieces? First things first, folks, we have the time advantage, right? Just look at our development. We have beautiful piece activity on the f-file, while black's pieces are still sleeping on the queen side. But if you give time to black, they will slowly consolidate and they will completely equalize the position. So our orientation phase is telling us that white has no time to lose. White must strike when the iron is hot and use the momentum and initiative to create something directly from this position. And you tell me the move that does that. You're a great player if you found the move d6, the clearance pawn sacrifice for the sole purpose of activating the worst place piece, the knight on c3. Now the knight is coming to d5 with tempo, and you look at our time advantage growing. Black needs to waste one full tempo with the queen, and there are many winning ways here for white, but I very much like this variation, knight e8, and after the queen moves to h6 to be able to guard those two squares. Now we can cash in our advantage, trade the queens, because in the end of this line, we're going to take on d6, and this bishop is dropping on c8. Look how white used their time advantage from the initial position to strike when the iron was hot and transformed the advantage to a material advantage, right? All three pieces are working. Black has several pieces sleeping on the queen side. Thus, white must have struck much more energetically in its position, right? That's the conclusion. Like in contrast to the last example, here, white had to go for direct action. Can you see my point, guys? This is totally about your orientation phase. You understand the gist of the position, and this is guiding your moves, right? It's not like a random trial and error, checks, captures, threats that are guiding this decision. It's much more plan-based, much more deeper understanding that is guiding your decision here. I just, again, the verbalization phase is so important. You need to like verbalize the situation to yourself, logical breakdowns. What is my advantage here? It's totally about time. If you wait, black will consolidate. Thus, you go for dynamism. The same token also applies when we have weaknesses in the position. For example, that's a very typical Sveshnikov structure, and we have a gaping hole on d5. If given time, white will play this, knight c2, knight b4, queen somewhere, knight d5, and they will have this amazingly beautiful knight on an outpost on d5. So our logical breakdown is telling us that black has no time to lose, or time is the friend of white in this position. You're talking about static advantages. Statically, white is better in this position, mainly because of the outpost on d5, right? So black should not give this to white. If you wait, if you play slowly, white will consolidate and gain the upper hand. Thus, this logical breakdown is telling us strategically, right, that we have to play actively to change the picture drastically as soon as possible. And you tell me the best plan for black, folks. You're a great player if you came up with a plan rook c5, removing the queen from d5, and what's our next move here? That's the most important part to me. Great player you are if you came up with the move d5. And there is no more d6 backward pawn to worry about. There is no more d5 outpost to worry about. If white takes our pawn, then that's a beautiful transformation for black in this position. Okay? If white doesn't take the pawn and go for b4 in this position, yes, they can win a pawn, but look what we get in return. Our e-pawn is rolling one step forward. He will go one step forward, and this bishop gets active. This c3 pawn is now hanging. This knight on a3 is a bad piece, and you see how dynamically black is playing to change the picture. Because time was the friend of white, black is playing actively to create dynamic counterplay. And here, of course, rook takes d5. That's a beautiful tactic, because if rook takes d5, bishop e3 will win the queen. Even here, right, you see how actively black is playing to get what they wanted. I go back to the initial position, folks. If you did not play like that, if you keep on waiting, I don't know, some random moves, yeah? Let's say black keeps on waiting. That was exactly what white wanted to do, right? Knight b4 followed by knight d5, and suddenly knight is the king of the board, and white has all the static advantages. Now you can no longer have the d5 pawn break to liberate your pieces. That's pure suffering for black from this position. So strong players, they understand these things already from this pawn structure. That's why their system, let's say their thinking system, is guided by those general strategic considerations. I have no time to lose. I have to play actively. That's why I will seek for those dynamical moves that give me ideas, maybe b4 even directly, right? Positional pawn sacrifice to activate your pieces. Fight when you can fight in those positions, right? So that's a basic lesson from here. We are learning to sense those moments where we must play actively in chess to change the static nature of the position, maybe to our benefit. Because here, if you look closer, right, static advantages suddenly belong to black because of the weakness on c3, bad knight on a3, and also this pawn, this bishop getting active and so on. Suddenly, we have many advantages to play for, especially of the rook takes d5, of course, right? That's a beautiful position, folks. I will show you a game of Botvinnik with white pieces. Here, Botvinnik's opponent plays c5. That was a clear positional mistake, and Botvinnik went, you tell me, b5, of course, because Botvinnik's idea is to simply get a piece on c4 and statically dominate the position. If you look at the black pieces, they are all terribly restricted. The white has the double bishops, and it's a beautiful static advantage for white. So much so is that black was supposed to play c4, positional pawn sacrifice to activate their pieces. That's how you fight your way from those bad positions. Black missed the moment of playing c4 sacrifice. He played knight e8, and now there's no turning back because Botvinnik is going knight c4, of course, because it's blocking that pawn, which is limiting all these black pieces for. You might say white has a long-lasting positional edge from this position, and you see how Botvinnik will play patiently from this position. First move is very nice, bishop g5. If queen takes the bishop, then knight takes d6, and that's just a collapse for black. So after bishop g5, black cannot take the bishop. He goes f6, but that creates further weaknesses on that diagonal. So bishop e3 back. Again, please read the board properly, folks. It's double bishops for white, plus terrible pieces for black. Clear static edge for white in this position. a5, chase the bishop away, followed by rook d1, activation. Black has no counterplay, no pawn breaks to change the picture, right? There's no f5, there's nothing. So white basically says, you know what? I will play slowly from this position. There is nothing that should hurry me. I should play like Petrosian, Karpov, quiet, prophylactic chess, because future belongs to white in this position. That's exactly how it will show us. Takes. Now the game is going to, let's say, a middle game without rooks, but white is keeping all the advantages. After king g2, this game was featured in a beautiful book by Michael Stean, and he says in his position, white's control of the position is so great that he could inscribe his initials on the board with his king if he wanted. Look at Michael Stean. He says white has such domination here, statically, that white can just write Botvinnik here with the king, right? Just B-O-T, all the letters with the king, and still black could not do anything to white. Black had zero counterplay, white has domination, so white should not hurry, right? There is no risks to be taken because future belongs to you. So we're going to see how slow build up Botvinnik is engaging from this position, right? See how it goes. Knight g6, the knight is still dominated by the pawn on g3. No activation. Just look at the bishop, the worst bishop ever, and compare that with this guy on c4. And now we're going to see how Botvinnik is forming a plan. Can you please stop the video here, folks, and find a very nice plan for white that improves our position further. and creates good coordination between our pieces. You're a great player if you found the move bishop b3. And Botvinnik wants to create this battery on this diagonal to further infiltrate in the enemy camp on those light squares. We have a light square bishop. Black doesn't have a light square bishop. So of course white wants to create play on those light squares. Simple chess, not rocket science. Yeah, queen c4. And now this knight is tied down. There are queen f7 invasion ideas, but the knight cannot move to stop that either, right? So by simple chess, Botvinnik improves. What's our next move? Of course, queen f7. And the queen is now in the heart of the black's camp. And there are many ideas like queen f8 check, maybe h4, h5 to have further grip on those light squares. Please pay attention. Black is zero counterplay. No piece can move anywhere. So white is simply having a domination in this position. If queen takes b5, of course, then you allow this, right? And white is an extra piece. So after queen f7, there is no counterplay left. But Botvinnik stops this counterplay with the move bishop c4. And now no piece can move anywhere. Queen d3 is not possible. This is not possible. Pure suffering, yeah? Like almost like a zugzwang position. Queen d6. What's the next move? Well, simple chess. h4, h5 introduces ideas like queen g6 at some point, but also maybe g4, g5 will follow to open up further lines on the king side. So that's a very nice move, h4, that creates one more weakness on the king side. Queen d1, black has no time to waste, but black has to play dynamically, but there are no dynamical moves left for black, right? That's the final problem for black. He needs to change the picture because the future is grim, but he has no dynamical ways to do that. That's the worst case scenario for us, when our hands are tied down, but we have no lock or chain to basically break the barriers and play for dynamism, right? That's the worst. And after queen d1 comes queen e8, and now we see similar ideas like bishop f7, bishop g6, maybe h5, right? You see, there are mating waves that are getting waved around the black king. Very difficult to play, so he destroys the position with f5. He couldn't wait either because this queen has zero counterplay against the white king. He tried f5, but here Botvinnik now takes on f5, and after knight takes, you stop the video here, folks, and please find the decisive sequence for white that forced a resignation in this position. It's white to play and win. You're a great player, folks, if you came up with the entire sequence. Bishop g8 check. The only move is king h8, of course. And after this, what's our next move? That forces a mate into, yes, bishop f7 check. And after king h7, queen g8 mate will follow. And you see, our attack is culminated by this beautiful mate on those light squares. This game is so beautiful, can teach us so many nice lessons of how to play with a static advantage in chess. And it already starts from this very first position where black goes c5. You see, in this position, if I rotate the board to you, if I ask you what should black play, you should already see that all the static cards favor white. Bishop pair, blockade on c4, zero counterplay for us. Thus, you should be willing to sacrifice pawns in such cases to get some dynamical compensation, because you know logically that that's your only chance before the final exit when suffering starts. Because in the actual game, black was suffering after knight e8, right? Like there is zero hint of counterplay, nothing really going on for black's favor. That's a purely static advantage for white, and there's no turning back, right? From here, black had zero counterplay for the entire game. It was so easy also to play for white. That's a problem, right? When you have such long-term domination, the game becomes easy to play. King g2, Botvinnik can ride Botvinnik with the king, and nothing can happen to white because of lack of dynamic counterplay for black from this position. But even here, right, how we formed the plan of bishop b3 followed by queen c4, and the rest is technique for a guy like Botvinnik, of course. But of course, we should extract the right lessons from this game, that we should sense those moments of the final exit that trigger us, right, to be willing to sacrifice to get some dynamical play. This will be your homework position. Let's see whether you can apply the lessons I taught you in this video. White's last move was knight b3 here, folks. I want you to read the board properly, look at those imbalances. The evaluation phase or the orientation phase is very important here for us to find the correct move for black. Please read who is better statically and dynamically. Are we facing any positional threats? And what should we play as black from this position? Okay, please write to me on YouTube your ideas, what you're seeing, and the reasons why that move should be good for black. I hope you got the right lessons here, folks. My goal with this video was to help you sense the critical moments in chess and sense when is the right time to cash in, sometimes sacrifice, to go for dynamism or attack, and at which times we should be like Karpov. Just take our time, play slowly, prophylactically, and slowly build on our static long-term advantage that is not easy to change. If you look at Petrosyan's game, right, he was a very prophylactic player, but he also liked to get those static advantages early on, right? For example, space, the bishop pair, and he was a master in keeping those advantages by careful play, by stopping counterplay from the opponent, right? Magnus Carlsen also plays chess like that. He likes to take those long-term static advantages early on, and he knows exactly how to convert it into victory because of his prophylactic vision and so on, right? These are very interesting positions to me, and we can discuss further on YouTube. If you want to discuss these subjects and consolidate what you learned today, you have to check my courses, The Art of Awakening Pieces, and also, in some sense, The Art of Burying Pieces show similar patterns, folks. The Art of Awakening Pieces is a separate chapter on sensing the critical moments. Just like in today's video, you'll train those positions that signals you whether you should play dynamically or much more quietly and carefully. Okay? Please let me know what you think, and if you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe, folks. That's very important for me to be able to produce similar content for you. I'm here to help you improve your game, and I will catch you on the very next episode. Bye bye.